Billy Morgan's throbbing manhood strained against his shredded spacesuit, begging to explore the alien orifices before him as the scaly Pandronians encircled his crashed ship, not realizing that human mating urges were completely unstoppable. Billy's mission was blown, literally. His ship malfunctioned and veered off course, smashing into the sacred Pandronian hunting grounds. He kicked open the crumpled hatch, shaking off his wounds, stumbling out to face a pack of muscular lizard-like aliens, aiming primitive spears his way. Their leader Murloc stomped forward, green scales rippling, yowling unintelligibly. "Easy, fellas, I come in peace." Billy reached for his universal translator, hoping to explain his innocent intentions, to find compatible alien holes for his raging human cock. Murloc's spear point shattered the device. More Pandronians closed in, flexing, weapons ready. Billy's hand darted for his pistol, finding only melted scrap. His fists balled up, bloody knuckles cracking. No weapons, no translator, and his dick painfully erect. But he had to survive this for the glory of Earth, for his duty to plow across the galaxy. To mate with aliens at any cost, and spread humanity's seed to the stars, Billy charged. Billy's fists smashed into scaly Pandronian jaws, green blood spraying. Murloc snarled and lunged, razor-sharp talons slashing. The human ducked and rolled, narrowly dodging a spear thrust. He sprang up swinging, but more aliens piled on, pinning his arms. They dragged him down, pummeling his body with blows. Billy bucked and heaved, but their strength was inhuman. He couldn't break free. "Stop!" a female voice commanded. The Pandronians froze and turned. A lithe figure pushed through the crowd. A Pandronian woman, her scales a lighter shade of emerald. She barked something in their guttural tongue, and Murloc growled back. They went back and forth, gesticulating at Billy and the wrecked spacecraft. Finally, the female turned to Billy. "You go with us," she said in halting English. Zila, you help tribe, give knowledge." Billy gaped. A Pandronian speaking his language, he stammered, Where did you learn?" "Other humans come before," Zila interrupted. "Ships crash, I study speaking technology. You come village as prisoner. Help us. We help you." Murloc spat to the side but waved his hand. The aliens hauled Billy to his feet, lashing his wrists with vines, prodding him forward. He stumbled along, wincing, Zila taking the lead. They marched into the dense jungle, following no path he could discern. Around him, the trees seemed to writhe with alien life. Unearthly shrieks and warbling cries filled the air. Billy marveled at how the Pandronians navigated the treacherous landscape. They swung from hanging vines and bounded up sheer rock faces with ease. The males jostled and shoved each other, flexing and posturing, clearly establishing rank and hierarchy. But the females, Zila included, seemed to walk apart, separate from the shows of dominance. At last they reached a clearing, primitive huts arranged in a ring. Pandronians of all ages gathered to gawk and hiss at Billy. Zila spoke to them soothingly as Murloc shoved the human into a small structure, a cage made of lashed branches and tangled vines. The door slammed shut with a snap. Exhausted and aching, Billy slumped to the floor. Hours crept by. Billy examined every inch of his cell for weaknesses. Nothing. He cursed himself for a fool, thinking he could swagger into this alien world, dick swinging, and fuck his way to glory. Now he was a goddamn prisoner, because of his cocky Earth mating urges. Stupid, his fists clenched. He had to get out of this, find a way to spin this to his advantage. The Alliance was depending on him to spread humanity's influence to... "I bring food and drink," Zila's voice drifted in. She appeared at the cell door, holding a carved bowl and hollowed gourd. "You must be hungry." Billy accepted the offering through the vines. The bowl contained a pungent mash of fibrous plant matter. He ate greedily, washing it down with water from the gourd. "Zila," he said between mouthfuls, "I need to know what's going on. Why did you stop the others from killing me?" "My people suffer," she said quietly. "Climate change much in recent years. Plants and animals die. Tribes fight for hunting grounds. Your knowledge, your skycraft magic, can help us." "My technology, you mean?" Billy's mind raced. If I agree to help you, what do I get in return? Will you let me go? Billy considered. Zila and her people needed him alive. They wanted something from him. That gave him leverage. If he played this right, he could turn them from captors to allies. To get off this rock, he needed local support and resources. More importantly, if he helped the Pandronians, they would owe him. And he knew just how to collect on that debt, his still rigid manhood pulsing. "All right, Zila, you've got a deal," he said, meeting her golden reptilian eyes. "I'll help your tribe, but I'm not just going to hand over my tech. You want my aid? I need you to trust me. I may be a prisoner for now, but I'm going to prove myself, as a capable male, a warrior and a provider. I'll show you what a human can do." Zila held his gaze for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I believe you, Billy of Earth. In time you will earn place with us. Prove you are strong, brave, wise. You will be one of tribe." She turned to go, pausing at the cell door. "And Billy," her forked tongue flicked over her scaly lips, "you show me what other things human males can do, yes?" With a flick of her tail, Zila was gone. Billy slumped back against the vines, head swimming. He'd bought himself some time, and perhaps a bit more than that. Now he just had to find a way to impress a village of super-strong lizard aliens with his skills and knowledge, all while nursing a monster case of space blueballs. Just another day in the life of Ensign Billy Morgan, interstellar poonhound. Billy's eyes snapped open as a rough hand shook him awake. Murloc loomed over him, eyes narrowed. "Human, today you prove worth. Trial by combat. You win, you join tribe. Lose." He drew a finger across his throat. Billy's heart pounded, but he nodded. This was it, his chance to earn a place here and access to the resources he needed. "I accept." Word spread quickly through the village. By noon it seemed every Pandronian had gathered around the central arena, a circular pit of packed dirt ringed by crude stone bleachers. Billy was shoved into the center, blinking in the harsh sun. Zila approached and pressed a primitive spear and shield into his hands. The wood was rough, the balance off, but he gripped them tight. Murloc strutted into the arena to raucous cheers, flexing and roaring. Lethal-looking metal claws glinted on his forearms. He beat his chest and leveled a predatory grin at Billy. "Ready to die, soft little human?" Billy shifted his stance, planting his feet. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing." The crowd howled as the combatants charged. Murloc came in hard and fast, claws slashing. Billy backpedaled, barely deflecting the first flurry of blows. Murloc pressed the attack, relentless, his superior strength and speed overwhelming. A claw raked Billy's thigh and he stumbled. First blood to the Pandronian. Billy scrambled back, reassessing. He couldn't beat Murloc on pure brawn. He had to be smart, unpredictable. He circled away, goading Murloc to chase him. The big alien snarled and lunged. At the last second, Billy juked left. Murloc committed, claws stabbing air as Billy dodged right and rammed his spear into Murloc's side. Green blood spurted, and Murloc roared in pain. He spun and came at Billy like a freight train, claws slicing in a silver blur. Billy ducked and rolled, feeling the deadly swipe pass inches from his face. He came up swinging, bashing Murloc hard across the head with his shield. The alien went down like a ton of bricks. Silence fell over the arena, then a rising babble of grunts and hisses. Pandronians surged to their feet, roaring and shaking their fists. Billy stood over Murloc's prone form, chest heaving, gripping his bloodied weapons. He met Zila's eyes and she flashed him a fierce, triumphant smile. He'd done it. Over the next few weeks, Billy threw himself into village life with gusto. With Zila translating, he shared his technical know-how freely. He showed the Pandronians how to salvage parts from his ship to construct an irrigation system, nearly doubling their crop yields. He taught them to process the nutritious fibers from a stubborn local plant, unlocking a new food source. He even doctored basic injuries and illnesses with surprising success. Day by day, Billy felt the Pandronians warming to him. Oh, Murloc still glowered and spat whenever he passed. But the others, they started to include him. inviting him to share meals, to join hunts, to participate in their guttural songs and dances around the nightly bonfires. And Zila was always at his side, her scales brushing his skin, her eyes sparkling with some undefined promise. Slowly, Billy realized his perception of the Pandronians had fundamentally shifted. These were no mere primitive brutes, no simple beasts to be exploited and discarded. They were a proud people, a rich culture, as deserving of respect as any. The epiphany rocked him. He was no longer a captive or an outsider, but part of the tribe. He had a place here, a purpose. He'd found where he belonged among the stars. Of course, belonging wasn't all he'd found. There was still the matter of his raging human libido and a certain sultry-scaled female who seemed increasingly eager to help him with that not-so-little problem. As Zila led him into her hut one night, her tail curling around his waist, Billy grinned. The stars weren't the only thing he planned on penetrating out here. Billy stripped off his sweat-soaked shirt as he helped Zila dig irrigation trenches under the scorching twin suns. Her emerald scales glistened, her sinewy arms flexing as she worked. Billy's heart raced, and not just from the heat and exertion. Working side by side in close proximity, hands brushing as they passed tools, he couldn't deny his growing feelings any longer. Her keen mind, her noble spirit, the graceful curves of her reptilian form, she captivated him in a way no earth woman ever had. As they paused to drink from hollowed gourds, their eyes met and locked. Electricity crackled between them. On pure impulse, Billy leaned in, pressing his lips to her cool, scaled ones. Zila stiffened in surprise for a heartbeat before melting into the kiss, her forked tongue flicking against his. Dropping the gourds, they embraced, hands roaming feverishly. Zila's talons raked lightly down Billy's back as he cupped her firm, scaled buttocks. They ground against each other, human hardness meeting alien heat. Passion built to a crescendo. A shrill horn blast shattered the moment. They sprang apart as panicked screams erupted from the village. "An attack," Zila hissed. "Zorgon's tribe, quickly!" Heart pounding, Billy raced behind Zila towards the sounds of fighting. He snatched up a spear as Pandronian warriors streamed past to meet the threat. Chaos reigned as Zorgon's raiders swarmed between the huts, locked in vicious hand-to-hand combat with the defenders. The clang of stone axes and obsidian blades filled the air, along with brutal war cries. Billy scanned the melee and spied Murloc squaring off against a hulking raider. The attacker had a wooden tube to his lips, a blowgun. Time slowed as a poisoned dart zipped towards Murloc's unprotected back. Moving on instinct, Billy launched himself into a flying tackle, knocking Murloc aside. Searing pain exploded through Billy's shoulder as the dart found his flesh instead. He crashed to the dirt and rolled, breaking off the dart. Murloc stared at him in shocked disbelief. Billy staggered upright, wrenching the dart free with a grimace. "Watch your six, Murloc. Don't let these bastards flank us." The battle raged on, Billy fighting through waves of dizziness. He and Zila rallied the Pandronians, directing them to form a shield wall to block the raiders and push them back. The line held, and slowly the tide turned. Zorgon's forces fell back, fleeing into the jungle. As the village cheered in victory, Billy's knees buckled and he collapsed. His vision tunneled to black, Zila's alarmed face the last thing he saw before the poison dragged him under. Fractured images swam through the void. Zila's anguished golden eyes, Murloc barking orders, the ancient healer crouching over him, chanting, daubing pungent poultices on his wound. Feverish heat and bone-deep chills warred within him. Time lost all meaning. After an eternity the fever broke. Light and sensation seeped back in. Billy cracked encrusted eyelids to find Zila slumped at his bedside, gripping his hand even in exhausted sleep. His heart swelled. The poison had not claimed him, but she had, mind, body, and soul. "Zila," he rasped. Her head snapped up, eyes brimming with relief and raw emotion. "Billy, the gods blessed your return to me." She squeezed his hand fiercely. I feared. "Takes more than a little dart to put me down." He managed a wink. "Besides, you think I'd leave before finishing what we started in those fields?" Zila laughed, tears flowing. She bent to touch her brow to his in the Pandronian gesture of deepest affection. "My strange, brave male, you are one of us now, truly, and you are mine." She stretched out beside him on the woven pallet, mindful of his bandaged shoulder. Billy savored her warmth, breathing in her wild alien scent. Let the galaxy wait. He was already home. As Billy's strength slowly returned, he began to piece together the grim reality facing the Pandronians, from whispered conversations around his sickbed. Zila finally confirmed the truth. Zorgon's brutal Shadowclaw tribe had been rampaging across Pandronia, crushing village after village, seizing hunting grounds and enslaving survivors. Billy struggled to sit up, ignoring the lancing pain in his shoulder. "This can't go on. Zorgon will destroy your whole world if he isn't stopped." Zila nodded grimly. "But the tribes are divided, fighting each other as much as the Shadowclaws. How can we stand against Zorgon? We are not unified." An idea kindled in Billy's mind. What if we brought the tribes together, showed them that the only way to survive is to stand as one? Then we give them a reason to set that aside. We show them what's at stake and why cooperation is their only chance. Billy threw off his blankets, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "We need to talk to Murloc and the elders, now." Murloc crossed his arms, skeptical. "You expect bitter rivals to sit in peace, share fires and food with enemies. It cannot be done." "It must be," Billy insisted. "Or would you rather watch your people enslaved one by one? See your lands despoiled, your way of life destroyed? Because that's what will happen if we don't act." The elders muttered uneasily. Finally, the eldest, a grizzled warrior named Krazix, thumped his staff. "The human speaks hard truths. We cannot fight this war alone. I say we try this. Gathering." Over the next weeks, Billy threw himself into preparations, working feverishly despite his barely healed wound. With Zila translating, he cannibalized components from his wrecked ship, jerry-rigging a universal translation matrix to bridge the linguistic gaps between tribes. Emissaries were dispatched to every corner of Pandronia, bearing invitations and assurances of safe passage. Slowly, warily, tribal leaders began to arrive, eyeing each other suspiciously as they gathered in the village center. Tensions crackled like lightning in the air as the summit began. Tails lashed and fangs bared as old grievances were dragged out and shouted. Billy watched in growing despair as the meeting teetered on the brink of violence. He leaped to his feet and activated the translator. "Enough!" His voice boomed out in a dozen Pandronian dialects. Shocked silence fell. "I came to your world as a stranger, an alien. By all rights, you could have killed me on sight, but you didn't. You gave me a chance to prove myself, to become one of you." He looked from face to scaled face. "Yes, you all have your differences, your conflicts, but you also have something far more important in common. This world, this home. Are you really going to let Zorgon take it from you, destroy everything you hold dear?" Mutters of anger rippled through the crowd. Billy pressed on. "The Shadowclaws are strong because they fight as one. They set aside their individual wants for the good of the whole. That's what we need to do now. Unite, combine our strength so that we can protect what matters. Our families, our future." Silence stretched. Then Murloc stood. "The human is right. I never thought I'd say this, but we need each other. This is bigger than any one tribe. I say we fight together." A cacophony of cheers and war cries erupted as the tribes roared their approval. A surging sense of purpose energized the gathering as the logistics of the alliance were hammered out. As the summit concluded, a glowing Zila pulled Billy aside, eyes shining. "You did it! I knew you were special from the moment I first saw you. You're going to change everything for us." Her next words made Billy's heart nearly stop. "Billy, I'm carrying your child, our child." A tidal wave of emotions crashed over him. Joy, fear, wonder, protectiveness. He gathered Zila close, mind reeling. He was going to be a father, to a child of two worlds, two species. Everything had changed. This wasn't just about his survival anymore, or even the fate of Pandronia. It was about building a future for his child, for Zila, for the family he'd found on this strange, wondrous alien world. But even as he held Zila, savoring their miracle, a cold tendril of dread curled in his gut. He knew Zorgan would never let this alliance stand. The Shadowclaw leader would rain down all his savagery and cruelty to crush this threat to his rule. A storm was coming, a battle for the very soul of Pandronia, and Billy would be at its center fighting for the future of the planet that had become his home, and the family that was now his whole world. Zorgan snarled as his spies reported the news of the alliance forming against him. The human scum dared to interfere in his plans, to steal his rightful dominion over the lesser tribes. He would drown them all in blood, starting with that meddling alien and his whore. "Summon Lixia," he growled to his guards. "I have a special mission for her." The lithe Shadowclaw female slipped into his command tent, bowing low. "You called for me, my lord?" Zorgan bared his fangs in a vicious grin. "I want you to infiltrate this alliance. Get close to the human and his mate. Learn their secrets, and wait for my signal. When the time comes, you will strike in the heart of their strength, and we will crush them like insects beneath our claws." Lixia's eyes glinted with cruel anticipation. "As you command, my lord. They will never suspect until it is too late." She slipped away into the night, already weaving her web of deceit. The fools would welcome her into their midst, not knowing the viper they clasped to their bosom. Zorgan threw back his head and roared to the crimson moons. Soon all would tremble to hear his name, and Pandronia would be his. As the drums of war beat louder, Billy threw himself into preparing the coalition for the looming conflict. He spent long days in the training yards, drilling Murloc and the Pandronian warriors in advanced hand-to-hand combat techniques and battlefield tactics gleaned from his own military experience. "Keep your shield up, Murloc," Billy barked as they circled each other, wooden practice swords clashing. "Don't let your opponent inside your guard." Murloc snarled and pressed his attack, his blows raining down like hammer strikes. But Billy deftly parried and dodged, letting the Pandronian overextend himself. In a lightning-fast move, Billy swept Murloc's legs and put his sword to the alien's throat. Dead. Again. Billy reached down and helped Murloc to his feet. "You're strong, but strength alone won't save you against the Shadowclaws. You need to be fast, unpredictable, use your head as much as your muscles." Murloc dusted himself off, a grudging respect in his eyes. "You fight well for a human. Our warriors will benefit from your teachings." In the evenings, Billy labored in his workshop, repurposing components from his crashed ship into weapons and defenses for the Coalition. He showed the Pandronians how to forge stronger blades using salvaged alloys, craft shields from durable polymers, and even modify the ship's communications array into a crude but effective radar system to detect incoming threats. Zila divided her time between assisting Billy and acting as a roving diplomat, traveling between the Coalition villages to smooth over old grievances and keep the fragile alliance from fracturing. Her growing belly made travel increasingly difficult, but she refused to shy away from her duties. But even as the Coalition grew in strength and unity, whispers of dissent began to spread like a poison in the shadows. Lixia moved among the tribes, her honeyed words dripping doubt and suspicion. "Why should we trust this human?" she purred to a circle of Pandronian elders. "He claims to fight for us, but what does he truly want? Power? Control? Mark my words, once the Shadowclaws are beaten, he and his mate will turn on us all." Some scoffed at her warnings, but others felt the seeds of mistrust take root. Sidelong glances and muttered questions followed Billy as he walked the village paths. He sensed the shifting mood, but poured his focus into the work of war, trusting that his actions would speak louder than any rumors. Late one night, as Billy tinkered alone in his workshop, a shadow slipped through the door. He turned to find Lixia standing there, her eyes glinting in the firelight. "I know what you are," Billy growled, setting down his tools. "Oh, I think you only know what I've allowed you to see," Lixia said, stalking closer. "We're not so different, you and I. Both strangers to this world, both destined for more than these primitive tribes can offer. Billy tensed as she ran a claw down his chest. Zorgon has seen your potential. He sent me to make you an offer. Join us, and your mate and child will be spared the coming slaughter. You'll have a place of honor in the new order. Rage and revulsion surged through Billy. He seized Lixia's wrist, squeezing until he felt bones grind. I'd rather die than betray my people. Tell Zorgon he can shove his offer up his scaly ass. Lixia hissed in pain and fury. In a blur of motion she wrenched free and fled into the night. Billy raced after her, but her lithe form quickly vanished into the jungle shadows. Heart-pounding, Billy sprinted to Zila's hut and shook her awake. Lixia is a spy. Zorgon sent her to corrupt the coalition from within. She just tried to turn me, but I refused. We have to warn the others. But as they rushed to the meeting hall and Billy laid out the tale, he saw doubt and suspicion, clouding the eyes of the assembled leaders. Zila vouched for him fiercely, but uncertainty rippled through the crowd. Just then Lixia strode into the hall, a triumphant sneer on her face. I tried to tell you all, she said, her voice dripping with false sorrow. I caught this human sending secret messages to the Shadow Claws, bargaining for power. Now he seeks to blame me for his own treachery. She held up a scrap of strange fabric, a patch torn from Billy's uniform during their earlier struggle. The warriors around Billy drew their blades and closed in. He saw the conflict raging behind Zila's eyes, her trust in him warring with her duty to protect the coalition. These are lies, Billy shouted, his mind racing. Lixia had outplayed him, used his own tech against him, and now the alliance he'd worked so hard to build teetered on a knife's edge. He had to act fast or everything would be lost. Lixia's eyes gleamed with cruel anticipation. I accept your challenge, human, she hissed. Prepare to meet your end at the claws of a true warrior. As the first rays of the twin suns pierced the jungle canopy, Billy stepped into the arena, his wounds freshly bandaged. Lixia stood opposite him, her scales glinting like polished onyx, her stance poised and lethal. At Zila's signal, the combatants lunged. Lixia was a blur of slashing claws and whirling tail, her shadow claw training evident in every lightning-fast strike. Billy parried frantically, his reactions slowed by his injured shoulder. He felt his flesh tear as her talons found their mark again and again. But Billy fought on, drawing on every scrap of knowledge gleaned from his time among the Pandronians. He anticipated Lixia's next strike, sidestepping and retaliating with a slash that opened a gash across her thigh. Lixia hissed in pain and redoubled her assault. Back and forth they clashed, the sand of the arena churning beneath their feet, staining red with human and Pandronian blood. Billy's vision blurred, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Lixia pressed her advantage, hammering at his weakening defense. She feinted left and slashed right, her claws aiming for his throat. At the last second Billy twisted aside, seizing Lixia's wrist and wrenching with all his remaining strength. Bone snapped, and Lixia screamed, her claw going limp. Billy surged forward, tackling Lixia to the ground, his blade coming to rest at her throat. "Yield!" he roared. "Confess your treachery, spy!" Lixia writhed in his grip, hissing and spitting, but as Billy's blade pressed harder, drawing a trickle of green blood, her struggles ceased. "I yield," she snarled. "I am a Shadow Claw, sent by Zorgon to sabotage your pathetic coalition. I framed you, human. The evidence was false." Gasps and snarls rippled through the watching crowd. "Seize her," Murloc bellowed. Warriors leaped forward, wrenching Lixia from Billy's grasp and binding her with chains. "Billy, forgive us," Zila pleaded, rushing to his side. "We should never have doubted you." She embraced him fiercely, mindful of his wounds. As the leaders clustered around Billy, offering apologies and praises, a scout sprinted into the arena, chest heaving. "The Shadow Claws," he gasped out. "Zorgon's army marches on the base, just as Billy warned." Billy struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Zila. "I have to lead the counterattack," he said through gritted teeth. "I won't let Zorgon destroy our home." "Billy, no," Zila protested. "You're badly hurt. You need to rest and heal." There's no time. Billy's eyes blazed with determination. This is what I've been training your warriors for. This is my fight too, for our child and our future. He turned to face the Pandronian horde, raising his voice to a rallying cry. Warriors of the Coalition, today we face the ultimate test. Today we fight not just for our tribes, but for the fate of our world. Stand with me, and let us show the Shadow Claws the strength of our unity. A deafening roar of approval shook the arena. Clawed fists punched the air as the Pandronians chanted Billy's name. Zila looked at her mate, pride and fear warring in her heart. The battle for Pandronia had begun, and only the gods knew which side would emerge victorious. As the twin moons rose over the Pandronian jungle, Billy crept through the underbrush, his heart pounding in his chest. Beside him, a dozen of the Coalition's fiercest warriors moved with ghostly silence, their scales blending into the shadows. They had one goal: to cut the head off the snake, to take out Zorgon and send the Shadowclaw forces into disarray. Billy signaled the group to halt at the edge of the enemy encampment. Crude huts and flickering cookfires dotted the clearing, but Billy's gaze locked onto the largest tent at the center, Zorgon's command post. We go in fast and quiet, Billy whispered to his strike team. No mercy, no survivors. The Pandronians nodded, bloodlust gleaming in their eyes. Billy drew his modified plasma pistol, the barrel glowing an eerie blue, a parting gift from his crashed ship, now a deadly tool of war. They burst into the camp like vengeful spectres, falling upon the startled Shadowclaw sentries. Pandronian war cries mingled with the hiss of plasma bolts and the wet crunch of crushing jaws. Billy charged headlong toward the command tent, the thrill of battle surging through his veins. He slashed through the hide flaps and found himself face to face with Zorgon himself. The warlord rose from a makeshift throne of bones, eyes blazing with malevolent recognition. "You dare!" Zorgon snarled. Zorgon's tail lashed out, snaring Billy's wrist. The plasma bolt went wide, sizzling into the tent wall. Zorgon lunged, a massive energy hammer crackling to life in his claws. They crashed together in a whirlwind of savage blows. Plasma pistol against energy hammer, human fury against Pandronian savagery. The tent shook with the force of their clash. "You think you've won, human?" Zorgon sneered, hammering Billy back with a crushing strike. "You know nothing. I have eyes everywhere, claws in every corner of your precious coalition." A cold spike of dread pierced Billy's gut. The traitor. Zorgon's spy was still out there. The battle outside faded away as the gravity of the threat consumed him. He had to end this now. Zorgon pressed his advantage, driving Billy back with a relentless assault. The energy hammer smashed down, barely missing Billy's skull. The acrid stench of singed hair filled his nostrils. Billy staggered, fighting to clear his head. His gaze fell on a stack of metal crates in the corner, the stolen explosive materials from his ship. A desperate plan crystallized. Billy fired his pistol wildly, driving Zorgon back. With a burst of adrenaline, he lunged past the warlord, diving for the crates. Zorgon roared with fury, charging after him. Billy whirled, aiming his pistol at the explosives. Zorgon's eyes widened in sudden understanding. "Burn in hell," Billy spat and pulled the trigger. The world erupted in white fire. The shockwave slammed into Billy like a rolling thunder, hurling him back. Searing heat engulfed him as the tent disintegrated. Billy hit the ground hard, the breath driven from his lungs. His vision swam, ears ringing. He clawed his way to his knees, every nerve screaming. The command tent was gone, reduced to a smouldering crater. Charred Shadowclaw bodies littered the ground, twisted in agony. And there, at the epicenter, a blackened husk that had once been Zorgon. Dazed, Billy stumbled to the corpse. Zorgon's claws were curled around a strange device, pulsing with an eerie light, technology far beyond anything Billy had seen on Pandronia. The implications chilled him to the bone. Zorgon had outside help, an unknown power pulling the strings. Billy pried the device from the dead warlord's grasp and tucked it away, a mystery for another time. He limped from the ruins as the Shadowclaw forces descended into chaos around him. Leaderless and broken, they scattered before the coalition's advance. The battle had turned. Victory was at hand. But Billy's heart seized with a sudden, terrible certainty. He raced through the melee, heedless of his wounds. He found Zila huddled in a sheltered glade, her face contorted in pain. Her time had come, even in the midst of war. With shaking hands, Billy helped deliver his child into the world. A son squalling and perfect with Billy's eyes and Zila's scales. A new hope born on a field of blood. As the coalition raised their voices in triumph and joyous welcome, Billy held his family close, but the shadow of Zorgon's revelation haunted him. The traitor still lurked among them, and the device in Billy's pocket whispered of a greater threat lurking among the stars. Their battles were only beginning. As the smoke from the explosion cleared, Billy knelt beside Zorgon's charred corpse, his mind reeling. The battle was won, but at what cost? He reached out with a trembling hand and pried the strange device from Zorgon's lifeless claws. "What have you found?" Murloc growled, limping up beside him. The Pandronian warrior was battered and bleeding, but his eyes gleamed with fierce determination. "I don't know," Billy admitted, turning the device over in his hands. "But whatever it is, Zorgon was willing to die for it." Together they carried the device back to the village, where the coalition's tech experts eagerly set to work examining it. Billy watched, his heart pounding, as they managed to activate the device's holographic interface. An image flickered to life. A towering figure of an unknown alien species, its features sharp and angular. "Greetings," the figure intoned, its voice echoing with ancient power. "If you are seeing this message, then the war has begun anew." Billy leaned forward, his breath catching in his throat as the alien spoke of a galaxy-spanning conflict that had raged for millennia, of a weapon hidden away on Pandronia that could decide the fate of countless worlds. Zila squeezed his hand, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. "What does this mean?" she whispered. "It means Zorgon was just a puppet," Billy said grimly, "and the real enemy is still out there pulling the strings." Over the next weeks, Billy pored over the device's databanks, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. The clues were cryptic, couched in riddles and ancient alien glyphs, but one by one they fell into place. The trail led deep into the heart of Shadowclaw territory, to a temple long buried beneath the jungle. Billy gathered his gear, his heart hammering with trepidation and excitement. Zila insisted on accompanying him, leaving their infant son in the care of the village elders. Murloc, too, volunteered to join the expedition, his eyes glinting with an unreadable emotion. They set out at dawn, trekking through the dense undergrowth, following the ancient star maps. The temple rose before them, a crumbling ziggurat of black stone choked with vines. Billy's scanner pulsed and chimed as they entered, detecting technology far beyond anything he'd encountered on Pandronia. Room after room unfolded before them, filled with artifacts of breathtaking advancement and terrifying power. And there in the central chamber they found it, a star map, glowing with pulsing light, marking the location of the hidden weapon. Billy reached for the map, his fingers trembling, but before he could grasp it, a voice rang out behind him. "Stop right there, human." Billy spun, his heart plummeting. Murloc stood in the chamber entrance, an energy rifle leveled at Billy's chest. The Pandronian's face was twisted in a sneer of triumph and contempt. "Murloc?" Zila gasped. "What are you doing?" "What I've always done," Murloc spat. "What's best for Pandronia and for myself." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Murloc's inexplicable absences, his insistence on joining the temple expedition, the unknown alien race seeking a foothold on Pandronia. "You're the traitor," Billy said numbly. "You've been working with them all along." "Very good, human. You're not as stupid as you look." Murloc's finger tightened on the trigger. "Now step away from the map." "Billy, don't," Zila pleaded, but Billy just shook his head. "I can't let him have it, Zila, no matter what." He turned back to Murloc, his jaw set. "I won't help you betray our people, our world." "Our people?" Murloc laughed, harsh and mocking. You really think you're one of us? You're nothing human, an insect crawling in the dirt. His eyes glittered with madness and greed. But I can change that. Join me and I'll give you power beyond your wildest dreams, wealth, dominion over worlds. All you have to do is take my hand. For a moment Billy wavered. The temptation was staggering, a siren song of glory and conquest, to never be weak or helpless again. And then he thought of Zila, of their son, of the Pandronians who had taken him in, made him one of their own. His jaw clenched, his eyes hardening. Go to hell. Murlock's face contorted with rage. So be it! But as his finger tightened on the trigger, Billy felt a sudden wrenching pressure in his mind. He cried out, clutching his head, as Murlock's psychic assault slammed into him like a battering ram. He'd known Murlock was a powerful telepath, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. The Pandronian's will bore into his own, shredding his defenses, seeking to crush his very identity. Through the haze of agony, Billy saw Murlock smile. Did you really think you could resist me, human? I've been shaping the thoughts of this coalition from the start, molding them like clay, and now I'll mold you. Billy screamed as Murlock's influence dug deeper, tearing at the fabric of his being. He could feel himself slipping away, his will subsumed beneath the traitors. With a roar of defiance, Billy surged to his feet, shaking off Murlock's control. The Pandronian stumbled back, his eyes widening in shock and fear. Impossible, he hissed. No lesser being can resist my power. I am no lesser being, Billy snarled. I am a child of two worlds, bound by blood and choice, and you're just a sad little man, grasping for the stars. He raised his plasma pistol, the weapon shaking in his grip. Murlock sneered and thrust out his hand, and the gun flew from Billy's grasp, clattering against the far wall. The battle was joined in earnest, Murlock's telekinesis hurling debris and ancient weapons with deadly force. Billy ducked and rolled, snatching up a fallen energy pike, the haft warm in his hands. They clashed in a whirlwind of steel and fury, Murlock's psychic might matched against Billy's skill and determination. The Temple Guardians, their minds enslaved to Murlock's will, closed in around them, stone faces, impassive. Billy fought like a man possessed, the pike spinning and thrusting, driving back the advancing constructs. But there were too many, their strength too great. He could feel himself flagging, his wounds sapping his strength. Billy struggled to rise, his legs failing him. Murlock raised his hand, power coalescing around his fingertips. And a plasma bolt took him full in the chest, burning a hole clean through his armor. Murlock staggered, his mouth opening in a silent scream. Zila stood in the doorway, a smoking pistol in her hands, a squad of loyal warriors at her back. Her eyes met Billy's, a fierce, proud smile on her lips. As one, the Pandronians surged forward, beating back the mind-controlled Guardians, driving them before them like leaves before a storm. Murlock howled in rage and pain, his concentration shattered, his power faltering. Billy rolled to his feet and charged, pike raised high. Murlock barely got his weapon up in time, the shaft slamming against his blade with bone-jarring force. They exchanged a flurry of blows, sparks flying, blood spattering the ancient stones. Murlock gave ground step by step, fury and desperation etched on his face. With a final mighty thrust, Billy drove the pike through Murlock's guard and into his chest. The traitor convulsed, green ichor bubbling from his lips. "You fool," he gasped out, sinking to his knees. "You've doomed us all." And with a final rattling breath, Murlock slumped to the ground and lay still. Billy staggered back, his strength spent, his mind reeling. Zila was there to catch him, her arms warm and strong around him. But even as they embraced, Billy's eyes were drawn back to the star map, glowing softly in the gloom, the key to a mystery that could shake the foundations of the galaxy. Murlock was dead, but his masters were still out there, waiting, plotting. The fight was far from over, but as Billy held Zila close, feeling the warmth of her scales, the beat of her heart, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers threatened, they would face them together, as one. For Pandronia, for their son. Billy, Zila and their allies raced through the ancient temple's winding corridors, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. Traps sprang to life around them, spikes shooting from the floor, massive blades swinging from the ceiling, jets of searing flame erupting from the walls. They dodged and weaved, Billy blasting obstacles with his plasma pistol, the Pandronians using their agility to evade danger. Ancient guardians, long dormant stone constructs lumbered to life, their carved faces blank and impassive. The group fought through them, Billy's modified weapons and the Pandronians' raw strength making short work of the crumbling automatons. "Fools," he snarled, "you cannot stop me. The power of the ancients is mine to command." Murloc laughed, a harsh grating sound. "Over?" "No, Billy, it's only just begun." He thrust out his hands, and a wave of force slammed into the group, scattering them like leaves. Billy rolled to his feet, firing, but Murloc deflected the plasma bolts with a flick of his wrist. They clashed in the shadow of the energy core, Billy's pistol against Murloc's psychic might. The rogue Pandronian hurled chunks of masonry and twisted metal with his mind, forcing Billy to dodge and weave. Billy retaliated with tight bursts of plasma fire, scorching Murloc's scales. Zila and the others joined the fray, harrying Murloc from all sides. But the traitor was fueled by desperation and madness, his powers lashing out in all directions. Billy saw an opening, lunging forward to grapple with Murloc hand to hand. They traded brutal blows, fists and claws smashing against flesh and bone. Billy headbutted Murloc, feeling the crunch of the alien's snout breaking. Murloc roared in pain and fury, his psychic grip closing around Billy's throat. As black spots swam in Billy's vision, he saw Zila rushing towards them, a spear clutched in her hands. Time seemed to slow as she leaped, the spear flashing towards Murloc's unprotected back. But Murloc sensed the attack. He spun faster than thought, and caught Zila's spear with his powers. With a vicious twist, he sent the spear slicing back towards her. "No!" Billy screamed as the spear punched through Zila's chest in a spray of green blood. She crumpled to the ground, the light already fading from her eyes. Billy caught her, cradling her head in his lap. "Zila, no, please." Her hand found his, her grip weak. "Billy, I knew about Murloc," she gasped out. "I hoped you could change him, as you changed me." Tears blurred Billy's vision. "I'm sorry, Zila, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," she smiled faintly. "You must destroy the core, its power. Too much for anyone." Her eyes drifted shut, her chest stilled. Billy let out a wordless howl of anguish and rage. He surged to his feet, grief and fury lending him strength. Murloc, momentarily forgotten, had turned back to the energy core, his hands outstretched. Billy charged, a plasma bolt exploding against Murloc's back. The traitor stumbled, his concentration broken. Billy crashed into him, sending them both tumbling to the ground. They grappled, rolling across the chamber floor, trading desperate blows. Billy ended up on top, his hands locked around Murloc's throat, choking the life from him. Murloc's eyes bulged, his claws scrabbling weakly at Billy's arms. "Please," he croaked. He staggered to his feet, breathing hard. The energy core pulsed before him, its power calling, seductive and tempting. He could almost hear it whispering in his mind, promising dominion, control, the ability to reshape the universe according to his will. He raised his pistol, Zila's last words echoing in his mind. The power was too much, it had to be destroyed. He fired, a sustained plasma beam stabbing into the heart of the core. The sphere shuddered, energy lashing out in arcs of searing light. Cracks spread across its surface, widening, the power within leaking out. Billy pushed harder, pouring all his grief and pain into the beam. The core flared, brighter than a sun, and then collapsed in on itself with a rush of imploding air. The shockwave knocked Billy sprawling. The temple shook, cracks racing up the walls, dust raining from the ceiling. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing Zila's body, shouting for the others to run. They fled, dodging falling chunks of stone, leaping over widening chasms. The temple was tearing itself apart, the ancient machinery that had maintained it for millennia finally failing. They burst out into the sun, stumbling and falling, as the temple collapsed behind them in a roar of grinding stone and billowing dust. They lay there, battered and dazed, hardly daring to believe they had survived. In the days that followed, the Pandronian people hailed Billy as a hero. They had seen the temple's destruction, felt the tremors of its fall. The story spread of how the human had defeated the traitor Murloc and destroyed the ancient weapon, saving them all from its terrible power. But Billy took no joy in their accolades. He stood apart, Zila's body cremated on a funeral pyre, her ashes scattered to the wind. He cradled their son to his chest, numb with loss, the taste of ashes in his mouth. He looked out over the verdant valleys and mist-shrouded peaks of the alien world that had become his home. Zila had dreamed of a future here, a future of peace and unity. He would make that dream a reality. No matter how long it took, no matter the hardships he would face, he would build a world their son could be proud of, a world free of the corruption and destruction wrought by those like Zorgon and Murloc. He owed Zila that much. He owed them all that much. Billy stood atop a cliff, the wind whipping at his hair, tugging at his battle-scarred armor. In his arms his son cooed and burbled, tiny clawed hands reaching up to pat his face. Below, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire. The ruins of the temple lay in the distance, a shattered monument to the follies of the past. The road ahead would be hard. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of doubt and despair. But as Billy looked down into his son's eyes, Zila's eyes, he knew he would walk that road, to whatever end. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.